Good morning. I want to thank everybody for coming to this informational session on the Plaza East rail issue. I want to introduce Andrew DeCesar, who is from Hillman Engineering. He's going to be providing a presentation. We also have here our manager, Paul, everybody knows, and then we have our attorney here, Michael Bender from K. Bender. What we're going to do here is we're going to have an entire presentation. We'd like to get through the presentation, and then once the presentation is completed, if any of your questions have not been answered, we're going to ask everybody to come to the podium, state your name, your unit number, and then your question, and we will stay here as long as necessary to get everybody's questions answered. I'm hoping that everybody's questions will be answered during the presentation. However, if they're not, feel free to ask whatever you want. We are here to make sure that everybody has a full and complete understanding of the projects. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Andrew, and he will start the presentation. And again, thank you for coming.
All right, thank you, Steve. Thanks for coming out, folks. Glad everyone showed so much interest. It's good to see a room full of people here. Some of you guys recognize me. I've been with Hillman Engineering here for quite a while. We're part of the deck restoration with structural preservations, who is also the contractor to do the building now. We are back to do the 40-year plus 10, you guys are calling it, for the building now. And part of this is some railing options that we have presented to the board and have also gotten pricing from our current contractor. Just to go through what we're going to be discussing here today. Let me get you fixed up here, is the current conditions of what we have out there on the building, the current scope of work as it has been bid, some alternates, which would be in this case some railing alternates, and some pricing for the railings. So through the slides that we show here, I'm going to show you some of the current deficient conditions, which are a result, in greater part, to the lack of waterproofing at the balcony edge. One of the reasons we're even here is because the board had emphasized a request to have a complete waterproofing warranty for the balconies at the end of the restoration work. And for that, it would include us going out all the way to the balcony edge and rolling it over the edge. We're also going to show some other deficient conditions of what we have seen up there as far as tile installations, some of the existing railing conditions, and some issues with the code compliance of your existing system as it is installed today. So the first item, lack of waterproofing at the balcony edge. This particular photograph that you're seeing here it was one that we took we did the precondition assay on this thing about a year ago. Some of the tile was removed off of this to expose that you can see there isn't a waterproofing membrane here. There may be some underneath the tile that we're unaware of, but out here along this edge, where most of the damage, most of the structural damage that we're replacing and repairing during the job is located. It's out on the edge, mostly as a result of the installation of this existing balcony system. This is the condition of what happens when it's not waterproof to the outside edge. That balcony system that you have is actually installed with a pin of steel that goes into the deck. Okay, and what we find with these kind of railing systems is that pin is often neglected as far as a waterproofing, and the water will travel in through that hole and get into the concrete and the structural components, which is the rebar of the deck. And this is the result. Those blowouts that you see on the bottom here of chunks falling off the building is a result of water intrusion into that edge, basically from the result of the way this railing system is installed. It's an inherent flaw in the system just because of the installation. If it was a maintained waterproofing all the time, we wouldn't be seeing this as much. Again, this is one of those things that becomes invisible because nobody thinks to take up and waterproof underneath until we get to a point where we're doing a restoration job like we're doing here. Some of the tile installations that we have that we saw while we were doing our markouts here are indicative of a possible spall or condition underneath the tile. Some of the tile installations themselves are a contributing factor to the deterioration of this deck as well. Tile is not a waterproof system. Tile is actually traps water against your structural deck. It will also accelerate the life of the waterproofing that was originally installed by holding out water against it. So this condition that I'm seeing here is it could be a result of two things. It could be a result of just poor tile installation, but more likely when you start seeing rust like you're seeing on this one here is it's more likely there's a spall or some structural steel that underneath there that has been affected by that tile being held onto the deck. Just some more pictures of the same type of stuff that we see pretty frequently throughout the building here on the tile installations. So some of the current conditions, this is a picture of a spalled and deteriorated, we call them the balusters of your railing system. Back in 2014-15, we did your recertification for your 40-year. We came and did what we thought were the most of the work on the railing system. We didn't go and do a full reinstallation as we're proposing here today. A baluster of this condition would have been replaced back in 2015. This has shown up since the 2015 restoration that we did. This was a current picture of conditions of what you have up here. And this isn't just the only one. There's many, to the tune of roughly about $100,000 worth of just balcony balusters and railing system components that we'll be replacing during this. So what you've been doing here through the past is fix what's broken, and that's not uncommon. Folks do it all the time, and you fix what's broken, but it's a constant. It's like painting the big bridge, the old joke. When you get done, you got to start all over again, and that's kind of what you're doing here with this railing system. Is we've already done a complete fix of what we could see that needed to be addressed, and here we are a few years later, and we're coming back to do it again because there's still others that were in some other state that we didn't notice that they were broken. They didn't expose themselves as being broken, so we didn't fix them. Now they're broken again. Some of the code compliance issues of the existing railing system, the main one is the excess of 4-inch spacing. The current code says a 4-inch sphere shall not pass through any opening in your railing system. Okay, your railing system was based on a 6-inch sphere not passing through. And so the current assembly, as you're seeing it, these are right off your original documents, kind of show that they're calling out for a 5 3/4-inch spacing, which is exactly meets the previous code back in 1972, I believe, when this building was built, that a 6-inch sphere shouldn't pass. Again, the current code now is a 4-inch sphere should not pass. Now, there are reasons why they did that. One, they don't like to have things falling off of decks. Children can sometimes find those things to be very entertaining to play around, and so they narrowed down that opening down to less than 4 inches. Basically, if you could put your fist, a man's fist should just about touch as you're going through there. That's the current code requirement. And you can see from your previous assembly some of the components. I'm going to step away from this just a minute here with this mic and show you how your current assembly is actually installed. If you can see here, this is actually a section view of the baluster. And you can see this is the pin right here that we're talking about that is allowing the water intrusion into the edge. And this is how this whole system is actually held in place. And then, of course, there's rebar here in the top and the cap that hold it laterally. So at every one of these balusters, there's a pin like this that is sticking into the concrete deck that is holding it in place, which is allowing that water, as you can imagine it being a drop of water, if you're running on your balcony coming across here, you find your way into that water, into that space, and now you got salt-laden water getting to your steel. That is the causative agent of what we are out here fixing as part of this 50-year recertification and as part of your maintenance of a structural restoration of your decks. This is the cause of it, okay? The cause is lack of waterproofing and water getting into that edge and causing the deterioration of the structural steel. This photograph here is also off of from your existing original plans of how the building was built. It's a very thickened edge there at 7 inches or so with steel right out to the edge. You can see that there's we call it a hook bar. It's kind of a J-shaped in nature there that is out on the very edge of the balcony. And then there's some temperature bars that are running longitudinal to those hook bars. We haven't verified, we're hoping that we find this condition when we start taking it off, because this is very conducive to us putting in this railing system here. That if we find that this condition actually exists and it was built per these plans, putting a different type of railing system in place should already have the strengthening out here that we need to be able to support the existing or a new glass railing system. Just one thing so you can see, back down in that bottom right-hand corner there, one of the components that you can see there is the weight, okay? This system that you have in place weighs 65 pounds per linear foot, per running foot, okay? The system that we're putting back on there does not come even close, about half that weight, okay? So that's another advantage to a different type of railing system than the concrete. Again, this is just showing in more detail there of what your spacings are on the actual existing railing system as it exists. One of your residents had given us this picture here to show that this is why the code has been changed, is that, you know, children love to play right on the edge of that thing, okay? And it's really a liability there, is why the code has been changed. Doesn't mean you have to change it because it's been here forever. I'm just saying this is why the current code is here. So the current scope of the work that we have on the balconies themselves that has been bid and is part of the project is first is the removal of the existing finishes, which is the tile or whatever might be on the existing balconies. There's a total removal of that to get it down to the structural deck. Following that will be any restoration. If there's rebar, if there's cracks, or if there's any kind of structural deficiencies that we find, once we remove the tile, we will address and fix those. The removal and replacement of any broken railing components is within the current scope of work. Okay, the waterproofing of the decks, excluding under the non-removed assembly, is not. So just to repeat that, we are not removing and then putting it back to waterproof underneath it, and I'll explain to you why. We're only would be waterproofing under the component that we removed. Okay, that's what's in the current scope of work that what we will be doing here. Removal of the entire balcony railing system is not in the current scope. It was recommended by your engineers, by us, our firm. Henry wrote a very explicative letter. It was supplied to the board. It is part of this presentation, of which will also be given to you guys later, so you can read through the entire letter there. Basically what the letter states is if you wanted to get a waterproofing warranty all the way out to the edge, a full removal of that balcony system or a balcony railing system would have to take place, and we could not put non-code compliant system back. We would have to put a new code compliant system back in place if we were to remove the entire structure of the railing system now. And that letter there is dated from May of 2017. So alternates. We have two alternates that we've come down to through discussions with the board and through some of the other committees that are here at Plaza East. So the first thing is remove and replace the existing railing with the like and same architectural cast concrete system that is code compliant, meaning we could put exactly what you have back on. It will not change the look of the building one bit, really, other than your spacing will go from 6 inches down to 4 inches. Okay, so what does that mean? That means more concrete railing, more weight, more restriction to your view out of off of your balconies, because now we're adding closer spacing of the balusters. You follow that logic there? We went from 6-inch spacing to 4-inch spacing. It means we're adding more vertical support and down to a 4-inch sphere. Basically, we added, on a typical balcony, would add maybe 3 more balusters of tighter composition, less air, more concrete. Or the other alternative is to put in a new railing system. Some of the pricing we got from our contractors, a representative of structural is here. Just to base it in what is the cost comparatively, the glass railing was actually less expensive than the concrete railing to replace it with like and same in a code compliant manner. The glass railing was less money. In this case, it goes from $1.2 million for the glass, approximately, to $1.7 million with a concrete system, as a new concrete system. 1.2 versus 1.7. The third number in there is an alternate to do even the area that has the concrete walls on the corner stacks, A and B and N and P. We took that number and we looked at the quantities, basing it on not only what structural had provided us, but we did it based on the numbers of costs that were associated with the previous time we came and did it back in 2015, because those were numbers that we actually had from a different contractor. Our cost on it, when we set it at $2015 value, was about 1.5. So since 2015, we're in about a $200,000 difference there from 2015 pricing until today's pricing. So we took exactly the same components that we bought back in 2015 and did the takeoff. That's what this slide is showing there, and showing what that cost would have been if we did it in 2015 dollars. So now to show you some of the good stuff here, right? So the views from the balconies. Right now, this is just a very standard view from one of your balconies here, facing east to the ocean. Okay. Some of these pictures are up in your hallways, came directly from this presentation that we were about to give. The typical A and B stack there as a view. Obviously, this is an angle there would be a little bit blocked. You can't really see out through it. When we put glass railings on, this is a post-mounted glass railing. We also have the option of doing a post-less glass railing, which gives a totally unobstructed view through the glass. Typical, same thing on the NMP, another rendering shot here that we made from the NMP stack. Again, here would be the rendering of what you could foresee there if we were to put in the post-mounted glass in place or the post-less glass in place. These are a couple of alternates that we have within the actual glass railing systems that we could put in here. This last shot is kind of just a shot of of the building here from the pool side. That's a little bit misleading here, and one thing is that it doesn't show any shutters in the way, but if everyone were to put in hurricane glass and the railings, this could be what your building looks like, okay, if we didn't have the shutters in the way. We're showing those pictures of the before and after. This is the shot here that could show, if there were no shutters in, what the building could really look like with the glass railings in place. Very nice, thanks. Okay, so the next couple of sections here deal with some of the other components in both legal aspects and financial aspects. I can tell you here was a couple things that came up to me as feedback from the association was, hey, look, it looks pretty hard to clean, Andrew. How are we going to clean this thing? So there are conventional ways to clean it. Let me see if I can get this thing to play here. Okay. So, this is, old school type stuff. You go out there and you take your squeegee to it, and it could take a little bit of time here to do, and maybe you got to hire a guy to do it, but there's ways that you can do it this way, okay? I can tell you that it's not something that becomes so clouded and dirty that you can't see out of it. It's just like these windows here. Yeah, you want to clean them once in a while, but there are hydrophobic kind of things that we could put on them. We could order it even with a hydrophobic coating on them. Some of the things you could put on them, even in yourself, are things like if you ever put Rain-X, anybody has a car and used Rain-X before, those kind of things shed water right off. But you can see, you can reach over, you squeegee the things. It does take a little bit of time to do it. So not very hard at all. The second one, see if it actually is playing. I'm thinking it's playing. Yeah. This is a device that is used on high rises and areas where glass is hard to get to. Now, again, this wasn't done with railing. This was done with a window. But it basically has a magnet that you make wet, okay? And then you guys might want to like this even for your kitchen windows that are hard to get to. I know that some people really like that. And then basically it's just washing the window with through it there. So there's ways of maintaining it for cleanliness that folks are. I know that's a big contention of wow, we got to clean them, and I get it. I have a mother that had white carpeting in her house and liked to keep everything very clean, and so there are ways of cleaning it that are manageable and not that it would be horrible to clean, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time here to do. This will all be available to you guys. This device is pretty neat. I think it's pretty cool. And so this part of it is, well, let's go through this part here now. So going back to why we got to remove the existing railing. We want to get a complete waterproofing system that you could get under a warranty on the balconies. That was the intent of why we have to remove the entire railing system. The current scope of work does not include doing underneath the current railing system, so you would not achieve a full warranted waterproofing. That's really what we're trying to get to here. The benefit of the waterproofing is that it gives longevity to the repairs that we're doing here, okay? I get the same question, hey, didn't you guys just fix this thing a few years ago? And we say, yeah, well, we did. But it's always going to be, you're in a 40-year-old building. There's going to be some maintenance of this type of stuff as you go along. But you want to at least protect the stuff that we did maintain, protect the stuff that you spent money on to fix. And that's what the waterproofing does. It's going to give longevity to these repairs and longevity to your structure as we go along. It's also used as a preventative measure to reduce future concrete restoration. And again, the stuff that we're coming back here to do right now is all out on the edge work. There's some that's back against your sliding glass doors. Some of you guys have seen that if you've done a remod or put new doors in and you've had us come out and address the steel that's there. But most of the work that we're doing and we're addressing has got to do with the edge out on the top. Some of the historical costs that we had through this building here since around 2009, 2010, just on that railing system alone has cost you about $1.1 million since the 2009 restoration work that has been done. And that's through the historical process here we went through there. Through all that, this will be the third time that we're coming up on it here, although there is some money built into it from this time. This will be the third time we're actually coming out and doing the same work in the 10-year period because it hasn't been addressed, it hasn't been waterproofed, it hasn't been protected from future work, and to keep it from having to come back is why we're proposing to do this work. Some of the cost comparisons, again, this is blown up in red here so you can see it. The post-mounted glass railing system at that $1.2 million, okay? The next number down there is to do the little bit of wing walls that are on the end, the corner stacks. That goes up to about 1.3. And then the concrete baluster one is $1.7 million. The glass railing is actually less expensive than coming back and putting in the concrete railing system. Okay. Some of the additional benefits to doing this work. One, you get a modernization of the building. Okay. If you go out and look at any of the new buildings that are being built up and down the coast, everything's coming out with glass rails on it. It's what the modern buildings are looking like as they're going up. You get the unobstructed views of the ocean. You guys are on the $1 million view right out these windows here. You'll have it as you're sitting in your living room, be able to look right out there and see that same view. It's extremely low maintenance as far as we don't come back and have to do restoration on it all the time. It's put in a way that reduces the amount of maintenance that we'll have to do on that balcony edge later. Which leads into the next one. There's no more costly maintenance on the existing concrete railing system. We don't have to come out and replace small components of it. Like, again, that's the paint and the bridge type thing. You're going to be constantly doing that throughout the life of the railing system that you have in place. And the last thing is it increases your unit values. This is a very big bang for your buck, okay? The cost of the material cost of this railing system does have a return on your investment that is very, very quickly realized. One of the buildings you have right here actually was done by Structural Preservations right across the bridge, right on Commercial. You might see this building as you're going across, the Warwick. When Structural started on it, that's the picture you're seeing there on the left there with those big concrete type railing system out on the front. They flipped it into a glass railing system. You can see the difference in just the modernization and the architectural appearance of it. But the real value came in even in what the values of the units went for. Okay, in the 2012, an average price for that 1,200 square foot unit prior to the restoration was about $255,000. They're now getting $360,000 for that same unit, 5 years beyond. Now, there's other reasons that market has gone up, but 30% is a big jump in 5 years for any real estate market, okay? And we see this a lot. We see this up and down the Gulf. We see it up and down the coast. When we put the glass railings in, unit values increase exponentially here. Really, in realizing 20 to 40% increase in the unit value is a big return on the investment for the price of the actual rail that's here. So this kind of ends my portion of it. I'll still be here for the question and answer. Paul's going to come over and talk about some of the financial portions of what's going to happen here beyond how are you going to pay for it, really. That's the question I'm sure he's going to try and answer here for you. That one makes it go forward.
That one makes it go forward? All right. Hi, everyone. So I get the toughest part of the presentation, but it's going to be brief because right now, the association took out a line of credit with several projects in mind. Included in the budgeted projects was the 50-year recertification and this concrete restoration work. Not enough money was put into that budget for this work. So at this point, the options are to communicate with the bank and see if we can increase the line of credit and maybe extend it. And that's the principal path that the association wants to try and take. But right now, we do not have a definitive answer on that. It's in the bank's hands. We're discussing with it. Obviously, the amount of money requested depends on which kind of railing option is chosen. And that's where we are right now with financing.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be here. Again, I'm Mike Bender with K. Bender Rembaum. We've recently been brought on as your community association counselor, brought back, I should say. Real quick, last time I was out here, this room was still under construction, so it's beautiful. Your views are beautiful, and you guys have a beautiful building. This is going to be one of those times where Paul actually stole that because I thought I was going to speak by far the shortest, but he did. But this will be quick. The reason I'm here to talk to you is regarding can you hear me if I talk like this? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Regarding the legal aspects, and what that means essentially is how we do this procedure, this process properly in accordance with Florida statutes and your governing documents. The first item here where it says changes do constitute a substantive change, what we're talking about there is if there's going to be a change from the current concrete balustrade to the glass railing, as I discussed with your board, that would be what's considered a material alteration. Okay? And under Florida statutes, if there's going to be material alteration to the common element, then the required vote, then the membership has to agree to that. And the percentage is 75% of the total eligible member votes, unless your governing documents provide for a lower or a different percentage. Your documents provide for 75%, so as I've instructed the board, if you're going to change to a glass railing system, then you're going to need to ask the membership to support that, and at least 75% of the membership is going to have to do so. Okay, so voting options, voting methods. Oh, good, I did that right. Yes, everybody should vote. But how the vote's going to go is this. The way the vote is going to be handled is through a written consent process. And what that means is rather than you having to come back here for a meeting, where basically many of you would vote by a limited proxy checking yes or no, the written consent process is effectively the same process, but if you are not in favor of the change to glass if you'd rather put new concrete back, code compliant, for the 1.7 as opposed to the glass railing option for the numbers that were presented, you need not do anything. You simply do not have to return the written consent form, which will be mailed or delivered to you. If you support the change from new code compliant concrete to glass, then you would fill out your consent form and you would send it back to the office. It's that simple. So if you are in favor of the change from new code compliant concrete to change to new glass, the consent form is going to basically ask you to agree to that by signing, and it should be either all unit owners, or if you have a designated voter representative for your unit, that you use who votes for elections and amendments and things, that should be the person signing that form, and send it back. Again, if you decide, you know what, we don't want the glass, we'll pay the extra, we'll get new concrete code compliant, then you need not do anything. There is no no vote. You're not responding is your no vote. Okay? And I think that's all I'm here to say. Yes. See that? Thank you.
Okay, so I want to thank Andrew, Paul, and Michael. Now, if any of your questions were not answered, feel free, come to the podium. Everybody will be up here, Paul and Michael and Andrew, and they can answer any of your questions. So when you come to the podium, please state your name, unit, and we'll answer any questions anybody has. Thank you.
My name is David Weissman, Unit 8C. I've been in the building for 19 years. And does anybody, or do you know what we spent on concrete restoration for the balustrades in the last 19 years that I've lived here?
I don't have the information beyond the
I do.
2010. Okay?
3 years ago, I went into the office and went through the records, and I stopped when we got to 2.4 million, which certainly would have been enough had we done this 20 years ago or 19 years ago to have paid for the reduction of the obstructive view that we have and put in glass then. So the other question I have is that in the payment of the additional, if we don't get the bank, I assume there would be somewhat of an assessment made. And if so, would that be spread over a period of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years?
We haven't gone to that point yet. Of course, the worst-case scenario would be to assess, and that would be a board decision, how and to the length of it. I can tell you that the first plan is to see if the bank will extend the line of credit and give us a larger amount. We can borrow more. The current situation is favorable. We're waiting to hear from the bank. So right now, that's what we're hanging our hat on. As far as assessments, I wouldn't be able to, that would be up to the board afterwards.
I understand.
But yes, that would be the worst-case scenario in the situation.
The other thing, where we have a substantial number of owners here, and it's post-hurricane, I think that we all owe a step of gratitude to our manager for the continuous
Thank you.
flow of information and the hard work and effort that he put in to protect our property. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can go to the podium. You can wait in line there.
This is more than questions. I have some things that I would like to say, and I'll tell you who I am in a minute. I'm Barbara Mann, Unit 7M. I'm a part-time pragmatist, and I've been here for 17 years. I sort of, let's see, my iPad is not working properly. The phrase form follows function was coined by Louis Sullivan, who was a renowned architect in the late 19th century, early 20th century. He was the mentor to Frank Lloyd Wright. So I have a few props with me. I always like to bring props. This would be an example of form follows function. It's a really ugly shoe. This is an example of function follows form. That's not very pragmatic of me to have purchased this, except they're Chanel, and I can probably turn around and sell them for 3 times the amount I paid for them, because I used to work for Chanel. So, but this is not very practical. I can't do much with this. I can sit, and that's about it. So those are my props. You probably see where I'm going with this, and I'll circle back to it in a minute. Now, I've had a love affair. I'm a little nervous. You'll have to excuse me. I've had a love affair with these railings for years, with the glass enclosures, because I used to do business in Aventura and Bal Harbor, and I would ride down A1A to get to those places, because why wouldn't you? And I noticed, I think it was the Alexander and Hallandale Beach, they had redone the glass, redone it with glass, and I said, oh my God, I wish we could do that in my building. I know nobody's ever going to vote for it because it's going to be too much money and blah, 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 all that stuff. And I passed it, and it's beautiful. It really is a beautiful look. I mean, yes, that is definitely beautiful. So then they started to build them, started to do it here, and once again, I'm envious and saying how beautiful it is, and this and that and the other thing, and then I started to think about it. So I've had a lot of years to think about this. And I started to think about, yes, it's dirty. No, there's no airflow that comes through them unless you do glass slats, which one of the buildings down on the Galt Ocean Mile has done glass slats on theirs. I have the names of all the buildings that have redone the buildings with glass. So I decided to go on a little fishing expedition on Monday. I said, I'm going to go directly to the source. So I started to ask some of the residents. I just found residents that I say, do you live in this building? Yes, I live in this building. I interviewed 6 different people because it was about 6 o'clock at night, so there wasn't that many people, coming and going. I couldn't just sit around in the lobby, but I asked people. 2 of the people I had to disqualify because they didn't have balconies. We're lucky enough to live in a building where we all have balconies. Nobody liked it. Nobody likes them. They said, oh yeah, it looks really pretty, but it gets really dirty. It costs me $50 every time I want to have it cleaned. And the last person I interviewed was probably the most profound. She was a longtime resident in Playa del Sol, and I'll quote her. I hate them. I don't sit on my balcony anymore because it's so hot out there. You're not going to get airflow, and it's hot. Think about glass. Think about your car. When your car gets hot, think about a greenhouse. It's glass. It's going to magnify the heat. So I can't imagine that there's not some other solution, like perhaps, metal or railings or something. I understand that it's not going to have the same beauty, and it's not going to increase the value of the property. However, we live here. I mean, you want to be able to go out on your balcony. Let's see. And if you look online, there's a lot of options for metal railings. So that's basically the whole thing. I did a little homework. I went out and I interviewed people, which I don't think anybody else did. And what? Did anybody ask any other residents in any of the other buildings? Yes? What?
I spoke to many people. Many different buildings. I spoke
Oh.
to many people in many buildings.
Okay.
And they're all in favor.
Okay, well, not the ones that I spoke to. So that's it. That's all I had to say. Is there any reason why metal can't be put in? Is there any reason why metal railings can't be put in? Why that can't be an option?
We were trying to get it down to 2 options,
Okay.
so that you could only, if we had 3, and you had to get 75% to get 3 options, and it seemed that the consensus, liked glass better than the metal. So
It's beautiful. There is no
Okay.
doubt about it being beautiful.
So to try to get us to a vote that was something that was achievable, we went to what most people liked.
Beautiful. It's beautiful, beautiful, but it's not practical.
Okay. All right.
Aye.
I was asked to address one other thing here, is about the, heat behind the glass. Don't get me wrong, you're going to be behind, if you're next to a glass, I'm sure there's going to be maybe some sun shining on you, but nothing more than if the glass was there or not there. I get this all the time. It gets hot. It's hard to clean. I kind of showed you the hard to clean thing there, but restriction of airflow is minimal. You know, of course, it's not going to blow through the glass, but like you're saying, you leave spaces between the posts at times. There's air gaps underneath so the water can go off. It's not we're not enclosing and making a greenhouse. We're not enclosing and shutting off all airflow to your balcony. It still will roll over the top your beachfront. There's always a breeze here that will always blow, and so there will always be wind that moves. Maybe not to the effect that you have, but some of your places here still even have walls made out of concrete that are on some of the balconies that you have now as well. So that claim would be hard to prove, I think. But go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Fred Taylor. I'm from apartment 17L. The very first image that you showed, sir, this morning was the image with the tiles on the balcony. I wonder if you could put that back up for a moment, please. Sure.
This is the image you're talking about?
No, there was one prior to that, actually. Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Okay.
So as I understood you, and you'll correct me if I'm mistaken, I'm not an engineer, it was as a result of water coming between the surface or the concrete surface of the balcony and the tile that created this damage to the concrete. Is that correct?
The damage to the concrete is created by water intrusion. This picture is just to depict that there is no continuous waterproofing membrane at your edge right now. That's what this picture is depicting.
Had there not been those tiles on that balcony, is it fair to say that the water would just seep off the balcony and there wouldn't be any damage to the cement?
No. Without waterproofing, concrete will absorb water. Concrete is a porous substance. Water will actually pass through. The waterproofing, all waterproofing, or any coating has a life, okay? Typically, you're going to get 5 to 10 years of warranted life from this application that we are proposing to put on. Without any coating on it, water will pass through concrete and affect the structural steel of it. It will run off. There will be still a large percentage have sheet runoff, is what you're saying. However, unprotected concrete will absorb water.
What percentage of the balconies that you saw had those sort of tiles that might have magnified, if you will, the kind of problem, the damage that you're talking about?
The majority have tile on them.
The majority, more than 50%.
Yes.
And what was the status or those balconies that didn't have the tiling on it, in terms of the water damage to the concrete, or the damage to the concrete caused by the water?
I don't know that information off the top. I'd have to look at my field notes, but I would suspect it would be less without the tile.
Slightly less or significantly less? See,
I don't know if you're trying to pin me into a corner here, or yes. So I'm not going to answer that without knowing here, really.
I'm not trying to pin you into a corner. What I'm trying to establish, or what I'm trying to understand is, you've heard Mr. Wiseman talk about the amount of times that we've had work done on the concrete balconies over the last few years. I've been in this building, I think, for about 8 years, and I know that we've had a lot of renovations, a lot of work done since that time, including just 2 years ago. And when you did the work 2 years ago, or you did your analysis, did you put forward any proposition that all of the units should, because of the absence of this membrane, should have had some waterproofing work done, or the sort of thing you're proposing now?
We did, many times.
And what was the response?
Budgetarily, we can't do it. We'll address it at a later date.
All right, the next thing I wanted to ask you was about the code. Now, you talk about bringing the balconies up to code with a 4-inch division between the railings, as I understand it.
Yes.
Is that something that is only applicable to new construction? Or, in other words, are we grandfathered in at 6 inches, or do we have to, are we obliged by law to now change that to a 4-inch railing system?
You may continue to do the same type of fix and repair as required. That is not a requirement of what you have to do. You are grandfathered and until you reach a 25% threshold. Okay, that's kind of a common threshold amongst the Florida Building Code, roofing, other structural components. If you were to affect more than 25%, local ordinances, especially here in the city of Fort Lauderdale, would require you to replace something in full. For instance, if I had to replace your roof at the 25% threshold, the Florida Building Code and says you got to replace the entire thing. We haven't exceeded any of those thresholds through the repairs that we have done previously.
Okay, so I'm a little slow with this sort of thing, so bear with me. Are you saying that if you had to replace the railings on 25% of the units in our building or more, then you'd be obliged to replace them all?
Correct.
Is that
not-
a cumulative thing, or is that at any one time?
At any one time within any 1 year.
Okay. And how many railings would have to be repaired now if you were going to do it piecemeal in that fashion rather than throughout the entire building?
It's scattered throughout. Total, there's about $90,000 worth of a piece of cap, of a baluster here, and a piece over here. And that's the way that historically the building has been fixing it, and that's what is in the bid right now. Exactly how we bid it is following the same in situ that you have been doing. The reason we are proposing and have been asked to put this together is that the board wants to waterproof and do the waterproofing all the way to its very edge so that you achieve a complete envelope protection on your horizontal balcony surfaces. There's not a requirement to do this by any code, by any portion of it. We could go and still do it the way you have been doing it, okay? But you will not achieve any waterproofing warranted item, and this condition will continue to keep reappearing. It's gonna, you're in a, the ones that you replaced, like the gentleman said, back 20 years ago, are starting to now start to fail because everything has a life and it's not protected. There's no paint on these balusters or railing systems. There's no protection there from water to get into them. So anytime that water gets close to the steel with salt intrusion on it as well, because you're right here against the ocean, it accelerates the condition of what we're seeing here.
Can that waterproofing be done without removing the railings themselves?
No. You'd have to remove to get it all the way complete to the edge, we'd have to remove the entire system. And that's what I'm saying. If I have to remove that entire system, I can't put it back because I will exceed your grandfathering protection.
And the waterproofing warranty you're talking about is for how many years?
It'll range 5 to 10 years, depending upon the product that we chose. I think the one we have right now is a 7-year warranty on the waterproofing.
When you say the one we have right now, the one that's proposed for this new construction?
Yes, sir.
7 years?
Yes.
And is that parts and warranty?
Is that what?
Is that parts and labor?
Just material warranty.
Just the material?
Yes.
Well, the material is not an expensive component of it, is it?
No.
Of course not. I didn't think so. So the warranty is really quite a valueless thing then, is what you're saying?
No, I didn't say that. You said
Well,
that.
no, I'm saying it because I'm saying it based on what you just told me, that it only covers
saying
the
you're gonna get a
material,
lot-
and
just
the
because
material
it-
is not very valuable or costly.
Yes, but it's beyond the warranty. The value is in the protection of the component that we are protecting. It's not in the value of the product we're putting down as a warranty. It's that you have a warranted sealed thing that is saying, look, I'm going to give you a warranty that's going to be waterproof. The waterproofing, what it does is the value. It protects the work that we're putting in place.
I understand how warranties
The actual cost
work.
of the material is
Negligible.
low.
Well, then why doesn't the contractor who's going to bill $1.2 million to do this work put his money behind that, his mouth behind that, and warrant not just the materials that are inexpensive, but also the labor that is clearly more
If it was
expensive?
put down incorrectly, he would, okay?
No, but I'm talking about warranting it without having to demonstrate that he put it down negligently in the first instance. In other words,
Well, who's gonna warrant that?
Hold on a sec. We're just simple people. All we know is that 2 years from now, the thing leaks.
Right.
We want the contractor who built $1.2 million to come back in and do the repair work, not to tell us, well, we put it in properly, you prove otherwise, and until you do, you got to pay for it. That doesn't do anything for us, does it?
Okay.
Just, if I may just step in real quick, you want to speak to this? This is your contractor who would put in the waterproofing system, and I think the gentleman brings up a good question, what would be the labor warranty? Yes.
Yes, hi, I'm Steve Bright, General Manager of Structural. You will get a 5-year labor and material warranty. That if anything occurs on that balcony in 5 years, we're responsible for coming back and fixing it. Now, there are materials out there that will give you extended warranties, but typically, most of the waterproofing is 5 years, and it's protected with labor and material. If you want a longer warranty, you can get that. You know, it's an extra cost for manufacturer to provide that to you.
There you go.
And I just want to add to that, some of the work that Structural did on the deck less than 5 years ago, and we're finding fault with railings, various things, they've come back and they fixed them, and they're all warranted, and you may see them around over the last 6 months or what have you, fixing all of the things that they're warranted because it's less than 5 years. So that's the answer to that.
I'll be brief. Number one, it's a very compelling case for the glass replacement. So I think your biggest challenge is going to be conveying the information to residents or owners who are not here often enough to hear the or to see the presentation. So thank you for that. My question really goes to how the project is financed. Other buildings, in many instances, will borrow monies to cover the cost of the update or the repair, and then they'll collateralize, the building will be collateralized, and the payments are made. Each resident is assessed, obviously, in accordance with the amount of space they have or what portion of the building they occupy. We're going ahead with a line of credit that just continues to renew, and we adjust. It would seem that the building would get its cash immediately if by taking out a loan, and owners would be assessed on a regular basis. In other words, you would add X number of dollars to each quarter's maintenance fees. Has the board considered that?
Yep, that one's for Paul here.
Right now, the board has not considered that, but I wouldn't put it out as an option. The determination on how to go forward is going to be ultimately a board decision. We have not gotten to that board decision yet or discussion. We're in that preliminary step. We're also, at this point, waiting to see where the membership is going to go and their decision on the railing system. That has a lot to add to that as well.
Do we have any indication as to how the vote may transpire? Are we confident that we can get the number of votes to make a change or not make a change?
We're going to assume that we're going to have to replace them with the concrete balustrades and go forward that way, financially, because it's the higher cost.
Okay. As a contingency. Okay,
Right.
That's great. Thank you.
My name is Elaine Ostrander, and I'm from 5B. I've owned my condo for 10 years. I visited it for 8, and now I live here for the past 2 years. Therefore, my condo is used to being hidden behind storm shutters for years. What happens to our storm shutters if you put up the glass? Do they remain the same, or do we have to get other ones, or do you remove the rail, or how does that work?
Okay, couple layers to that question. The storm shutters will be put back, okay? There's a couple criteria as to a storm shutter that we can remove and put back. We've talked with the contractor here on some means and methods of what we can do to preserve and leave them in place during the actual restoration work. That would be the ideal option, is to leave them right there in place, kind of tie them off to the wall, and just have to take up the track and then put the track back. That's what we're aiming for. However, in the event that we would have to remove to affect some repairs, there's a couple criteria that fall into what can go back. One, that it was put on since the ASCE 7 code was in place, was 1997. I mean, it's at least since 1997, the age of the shutter itself. It'll have a tag on it that tells us that in particular. Two, that it's in good operable condition. There's no things falling off it. There's no vinyl, that it actually operates the way it's supposed to operate. And three, that it was installed with a permit. Okay, the onus of that proof is on the owner that, hey, I did get a permit, here's the permit for it, and that they're all very readily able to get at the building department to say, those three components we made. I've done it since 97, here's the permit of when I did it, and it's in good operating condition. That means we would be able to remove it from the building and then reinstall it, okay? If it didn't meet those three criteria, again, it's like putting a non-code compliant thing back in place. If it's before 1997, I can't take it off and then put a non-code compliant a fixture back, especially to the outside of your building. You could hire an engineer other than us, to engineer a way to fasten the ones that you have and get it to be done that way, but we won't do it. So we're just going to stick to the ones that meet those criteria there. If it was before 1997, you're talking about something that's over 20 years old. I would venture to guess that most have been on or newer since 1997, or have put impact glass on and may not even want this shutter to go back up again. Some people look at that option as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Andrew. Hi, I'm Gary Glanz, 11H, and my question has also to do with financing. Paul, I think I heard you allude to the fact about the financing, although it's not in place. My understanding and what I'm hearing is that, well, let me qualify that. I would like to think that a detailed financing plan will be in place to be able to get to the ownership before there is a vote on what to do. Okay. Is that correct or incorrect?
A detailed financing plan is not, at this point, ready. What I can tell you is we're actually close to being in underwriting with the bank, and they've been very receptive, and it appears that we may be very likely to get the increase and extension on the line of credit. I don't want to just say, yes, that's what's going to happen, and that's the way we're going, because obviously we still have to wait and get the final details.
No, I understand. Well, I guess what I'm saying.
This is the approach that the board is planning to take.
Okay.
And
I, for one, as an owner, would not want to vote on anything unless I knew about the specific financing of the project.
Fair enough.
And I think that's only fair to the entire ownership here. The second question I would have would be, I understand about a need to limit options on the project.
Mm-hmm.
However, you're only giving us one option, which is the glass. While I'm in favor of the glass, I'm suggesting that it's only one option.
Right.
It's either the restoration of what was, which is 50 years old, and I got to believe that through the technology of 50 years from now, there's got to be perhaps some others that would be as viable or maybe even more viable than the glass. I'm not suggesting a whole plethora of different options, but at least one other option? I don't get. Second thing is, I think someone alluded to, maybe it was Andrew, that the stacks, certain stacks had that concrete blocking, okay? And I don't think, I know in my stack H, we also have that concrete blocking. So am I to assume that if we do the glass, that concrete blocking will be removed and it will be all glass? Is that the option?
We actually, Structural had provided us pricing for both, to leave that block in place and also to not leave it in place. It's still an owner option. The cost is only a lineal foot add. Okay, if you say, I want to add it on, they have a lineal foot price, we'll add it wherever they would.
So how would that ownership choice come about between, let's say we're doing the glass, between with the concrete block or without?
How does it come about? How do we make the choice?
No, I think we're going to have to make that determination with the board of directors. If we go for, if the glass is determined that that's the way we're going, then we decide, I think it was an extra $100,000.
Yeah, something like that.
To change all of the N and P, your stack, and the A and B from the concrete to the glass.
What?
If that's determined, then that'll be up to the board to make that decision.
But why would that only be a board decision if it's materially changing?
We can leave it as it is,
The,
and we're done. But if we decide that, hey, for $100,000,
Right.
we can increase everybody's view even more on those stacks, I think that, the board as,
If I may, what the membership is voting on is to decide whether you're going to replace the current non-code compliant Ballard concrete with new code compliant concrete or switch to the glass system. That's the membership's decision to make. And if 75% or more of the membership says we prefer glass, then the board will take that mandate and finalize the scope of work.
14B. So, a couple of questions. One is about the tiling in the balconies. Is the entire tiling going to be removed or just at the edge of the balcony? That's the first question.
The entire finishes on the entire balcony will be removed.
Okay, because I'm doing renovation, so I shouldn't bother with replacing the tiling.
Not yet,
Okay,
not
good.
yet.
Second question, I assume the catwalk is not going to change. This is only the balconies, correct?
Correct. This is the glass railing was, although we had pricing for it, we were just focusing on the balconies right now.
Okay. Third question, per the last comment, I assume the decision on postless versus post glass is going to be done by the board later on? It's not part of the voting, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I personally prefer the postless because it gives you obviously a nicer view.
It's beautiful, I know.
It's beautiful, including the color of the glass itself, correct?
There's options of the railing system. Again, we didn't price for this presentation, we didn't price every option that's there, like the postless versus the non-postless or the tint. There's different pricing of different tint colors, believe it or not. That azul blue that you see that's very, very popular is one of the more expensive color tints. So we didn't go through every option of it and every pricing of it. We will get to that point if your association says, hey, yeah, we really want it, then we'll put more into that then.
And to what extent do these variations in the color or postless and so on change the price?
Not substantially, but there is pricing changes to it.
Is it roughly what, plus 10, minus 10%,
The
5%?
post versus postless, I was just talking with Steve there, we're thinking it's probably in the 20%, 20 to 25 maybe, as an upcharge to go to the postless. Different tint colors are thousands, or not tens of thousands, but in difference in price there for it too as well.
So the biggest delta is the postless
Yes,
option.
that would be
Okay.
that would be a bigger price for it.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Frank Renato, apartment 5N and P. My questions are to Steve, president of the board, and to Paul, the manager, please. You have a price up there for the glass. By the way, I've been for the glass since when? And how'd you get the price? And how many bids did you get to that price? And also, the companies, how long have they been in business?
Actually, that would be a question for Structural, because Structural, who was our approved contractor in this whole concrete restoration project, provided us with the pricing for the new concrete balustrades as well as the glass. And if you want to, indicate to us, I'm sure you went out with more than one bid to get. You went out with 3 bids to get the glass, because Structural is the board-approved general contractor for the project. They went out and got 3 bids for the glass and for the balustrades. Go ahead.
Frank, just an add to that, Frank, we as part of the bidding process that Structural won through the competitive bids, all the contractors we brought, all the general contractors had a glass railing option to be bid on at bid day through the different general contractors as well. So even though he had 3 of his own, each independent general contractor also bid glass railings as an alternate in their bids that we received.
But
Correct.
the contractors are not installing them themselves and aren't guaranteeing
So he will
themselves.
subcontract somebody to install it, if that's what you're asking.
He would subcontract, so that's another spoon in the bowl, right?
That's what?
It's another spoon in the bowl,
Another spoon in the bowl.
okay?
I'm not sure what that
Okay,
means.
all right, I'll let you
That's-
figure it out. All right,
I'm a little
but,
ignorant of that saying, I think.
but the warranty, is the warranty gonna come from a nationwide company? Or is it gonna come from some guy who's gonna make a home run and we won't see him again? Paul?
Will
Steve?
the warranty come from Structural ultimately has the warranty. Right.
The warranty for 5 years, we're obligated to make.
On the glass?
Yes.
Only 5 years of
Everything.
glass?
We have to cover A to Z for 5 years.
5 years, okay.
Right.
All right. Because we've had, like this roof here, got to repair with a guarantee, and then we're doing the roof again for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
We're not doing the roof for hundreds.
No?
They're talking about this work here on that.
Okay.
Just to interrupt, we will warranty everything that we do on this job for 5 years, whether it's subcontracted or not.
Okay,
No.
so the coatings that are on it, the coatings, okay, what he's saying is, no matter what happens to it in 5 years, structural comes back and fixes it, okay? So now, there's coatings that'll be put on the actual railing system. The thing that's making that railing, that aluminum railing, aluminum is silver color, to make it white, is called Kynar, okay? We've specified a Kynar finish on these railings, or a finish that keeps them from being corroded. That's the manufacturer's warranty. Structural saying anything happens in 5 years, we're coming back to fix it. If it's a warranted item, they're gonna come back and fix it. Now, the coatings are saying we should have no rust, no corrosion, no paint peeling off for the time period that was specified in the material warranty. Okay, a little different than,
15 years.
right, on some, right.
Yeah.
This is the structural. What companies,
Can you talk into the
Did you get-
microphone?
what companies did you get? Are they nationwide?
Yeah, we don't work with anybody that's not bondable to start with. So to have a bondable subcontractor working for us, you have to meet a certain stringent requirement. Let me just tell you a little story about what we did when we had a railing failure approximately 8 years ago. If any of you people ever saw peeling rails throughout the Gulf Ocean, it was an epidemic. Rista Railing was the company we bought the railings from. When they discovered that the work was, the paint job on these railings were failing, not just a little bit, but in cage blanche peeling off, we went back to their insurer. The contractor packed his bags, went bankrupt, opened another business in Gainesville under another name. But here's what we did. We stepped up to the plate. We not only replaced all the railings on those buildings, but we gave them an upgraded Kynar finish, which is the only finish you want on these rails. So it cost us in the neighborhood of nearly $2 million out of our pocket to satisfy you as the customer.
So you're going to warranty then yourself personally, your company?
Right.
Okay,
Next.
fine.
Thank you, Frank.
Just to remind everyone, they're the same contractors that did the pool deck, so.
Hi, I'm Mindy Tayer from 17L. I've got a question. You were showing a picture earlier on about, you showed the balcony without the railings, and you said, we hope to find this kind of configuration underneath. Do you
Yeah.
recall it was like a line with a little hook?
Okay.
Okay, what if you don't find it? Is it going to affect putting up the railings, and will that affect the price?
If we don't find it, we would have to do a bit of strengthening on the balcony edge to be able to withstand wind pressures against it, okay? That's really what we're looking for. If you can imagine, this railing system is set with a post into your deck, and that's what's keeping it up. Wind is trying to push it over, and if it was able to, if there was a failure on the concrete would break out of that edge, and then the railing would be able to fall, okay, if you could vision that in your mind. There's a couple of things that we can do if we don't find it. One is we can move the railing inboard more of the balcony edge. That would give us more meat of concrete out there on the edge. Or we would trench in a bar right along that very edge and put what we call it a temperature bar, would be put right on the edge to be able to give additional structural reinforcement of the edge. Again, we haven't done a big destructive test to be able to verify that. Existing plans and of what was built show that it is in place. We will verify that before we do, go into it. And there would be, if it wasn't in there, could possibly be some additional costs there to put it in.
Well, that's what I'm asking. What are those additional costs? Are we talking huge percentages, 10, 20, 30%,
No,
or
you're
cents on the dollar?
You're talking about, between $20 and $30 a running foot. So if you had a 10-foot balcony, you're looking at about $300 per balcony if we had to do that.
I see. And if you have to put it inside more, is that going to make our balconies smaller?
Doesn't make the balcony any smaller, just
No.
the railing, it's the
No,
railing
but
portion
I
will
guess
be
the
back
square
in there.
footage for the usable space smaller.
Could, right.
I see. Okay, thanks.
How you doing, Andrew?
Good, Chuck.
Chuck Rowan, 10J. I think I've been here 4 years. I never can figure that out. But I want to thank everyone, the board, and you, Andrew, and everyone else for a great presentation. Coming into this meeting, I was actually in favor of reusing the existing balustrades. And from the presentation, there was a lot of answers given to me which changed my mind on that.
Great.
My only concern at this time, other than scheduling and costs, everybody's concerned about that, is how we're going to word the voting document that's going to go out to the members. Will that include costs and everything else? In other words, enough information that people will know? Because if you don't get 75%, we're going to end up with new balustrades when we could reuse the existing ones, and it doesn't seem to be the way to go. So that's my only concern, and I just bring it up for comment.
That's for the lawyer here, I'll get the lawyer.
Yeah, right.
Steve, but I didn't get to talk enough, so I volunteered to come speak again. The written consent form that will go out looks like this. Do you have some here today to hand out? If you want to review it, they're in the back today. And what it basically is, following this presentation, what it's asking the membership to approve, if you want to approve, is changing from, well, I'll just read it. As you may be aware, as part of the ongoing construction project at the condominium, the concrete balustrades currently in place on all balconies must all be removed in order to complete full and proper concrete restoration and waterproofing to the entire balcony areas. Instead of replacing them with new code-compliant concrete balustrades, the Board of Directors is considering replacement thereof with the installation of glass railings on the balconies. In addition to the glass railings being significantly easier and less expensive to maintain, the actual cost to replace the current concrete balustrades with glass railings will be around $500,000 less than if we were to replace them with new code-compliant concrete balustrades. Code-compliant concrete balustrades will be higher than they currently are, and the space between the posts will be significantly closer, thus limiting ocean views dramatically. We are informed that the installation of glass railings on the balconies likely constitutes a material alteration of the common elements of the condominium. In accordance with Chapter 718 of the Florida statutes and our governing documents, the board may proceed with the installation. However, the prior approval in writing by the owners of not less than 75% of the common elements is required. Our legal counsel has advised the board that we may present this issue to the owners for approval through a written consent form, which is the purpose of this letter. If you agree with the board that the installation of glass railings to replace the concrete balustrade is in the best interest of the community, please indicate that agreement by having all owners of your property or the designated voting representative for your unit sign this letter as indicated below and return it to the board as soon as possible. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact the board. Thank you for your assistance in this matter. We will notify you if enough owners share our concern and support this project. And then the bottom asks you to fill in your unit number and indicate by signing below, dating and signing below that you consent to the installation of the glass railings instead of the concrete.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good question. The question is how much time? From the earliest, once the earliest dated consent form is received. So in other words, if someone was to fill it out today, dating it today is the 14th, there's a 90-day window to obtain enough of the owner percentage to approve. And I remind you, it's the owners of not less than 75% of the common elements, which, as you all know probably better than I, the way your documents are set up, it's not, your percentages vary. It's not one owner, it's not 1-1-1. There's a percentage vote. So if the way your documents are drafted, if 75%, if the owners of owning less than 75% of the common elements approve, it goes forward.
They're
So
weighted
that,
votes,
what
correct?
that means in English is, if it may not be 75% of all unit owners that is necessary if those who have a higher percentage approve it, although your percentages aren't that dramatic that it's going to be pretty close. But I just want to make sure, in full disclosure, that you're aware of that.
Let me follow up one more thing on time. This is what we call in the trade a long lead item. Our contractor literally cannot mobilize without direction as to what to do on the railing systems, because he will be affecting balconies right away, and we'll have to know which way he's preparing to go forward with. So we've gotten a couple of different schedule changes that structural had provided us to as to when is their drop dead date if we were to move forward. Again, it's the almost immediately upon them mobilizing, we would have to know which way we're going to go with this so that it doesn't cost you more money. Because the worst thing you ever want to do is change your mind on a contractor as he started to do work, and then he has to stop. Okay, so right now, I'll give you just a little bit of status update. We have submitted for permit. It is in the permitting stages and going through review as through the scope of work that we have. The addition of the glass railings would be a additive to the current scope of work, so it wouldn't affect permitting time. What it would affect is mobilization time, because if he gets a permit per contract, he's going to mobilize within 5 days after receipt of the permit. Okay, if we don't have a decision, he's not going to mobilize, because he has, all it would do is just be, starting the money tick without a direction to go. So the work doesn't even begin on anything until we have a decision on the railings. Okay. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name's Alex Sufrine. I live in 14M. I've been here since 2000. My family's had a presence here since 1969. And this is the third time in 17 years that we're replacing our balustrades. This is the third time that we're replacing our balustrades. And when the last time they were replaced, or it might have been the time before, we've gotten several letters from the building and the board stating that we should not put tile down, carpet, anything like that. But by your report, over 50% of the people have done that. That's definitely compromised the balconies and why this job is upon us before it really has to be. This is the third time in 17 years. My family didn't have to do this for 20 years. And this is, I don't know if anybody heard me, this is the third time we're doing this. And I'm for the glass railings, but it doesn't seem like we're doing it right. As Gary touched on, we're going to get no votes if things aren't explained to the membership in a proper manner. No one's going to vote for a blank check. Things have to be explained properly. I think that the presentation of those pictures is unbelievably misleading. Unbelievably misleading to not have the hurricane shutters in the second picture. We're misleading our own residents, and it seems like we're trying to pull the wool over people's eyes and not giving them the entire picture. The governor hasn't signed, we opted out of retrofitting our building for sprinklers, but yet this might be upon us again to assess us to do this. This is a major job. This balcony situation wouldn't even be a discussion because of the financial strain it would cause on the building to retrofit this building for a sprinkler system. This is a sexy project. It's beautiful. I would love to have it done. But it seems like we would get 6 people if this was an infrastructure meeting and it wasn't a railing meeting. But we need to know these things. Again, I want to see it passed, don't get me wrong, but I'm playing devil's advocate in regarding having the proper information to the residents. Why wasn't the entire balustrades were removed on our last on the last time this was done? Why wasn't it waterproof then? The entire balustrades were removed. So how could they not be waterproofed at that time? That was the optimum time. So some of the questions, they're legitimate questions. I don't know, maybe, in regard to you might not be able to field them because I know you're not a resident, but in regard to, having this done, over 50% of the people have done something that is compromised the structure of the building that was told in letters, countless letters. I'm sorry, they're not countless letters, but there were several letters mailed to not do these things. Where are the checks and balances going to be moving forward? That's what I'm asking. I'd like to see it done, but it seems like we're not posing it to the membership in the proper manner. Thank you.
All right. There was We were part of the last the last railing restoration. We did not remove 100% of the railing. That was not part of it. We have, on many occasions, said that there should be no tile or no carpet and no finishes on the balconies themselves many times. It's something that, whether it was a decision of the board or not, but nothing was enforced as to limit that. They've allowed people to put finishes on the balconies. We've suggested that you make it part of your bylaws that no finishes beyond that balcony. Okay, so it's already there. It's just been unenforced. A matter of enforcing on there. So just to clarify some of that. Yeah, sorry.
Sir, you brought up some very good points, and I just wanted to quickly clarify or respond. Again, I'm not aware, but Andrew was saying that the removal of the balustrades wasn't done in the past. It was repairs to. They weren't completely removed, and I think that's very important to clarify. I'm not saying one way or the other, I don't know, but I think that was what Andrew was definitely saying last time they weren't removed. Because, of course, if they had all been removed, I agree, it would have made sense to do it then. But I think that was the reason this is now being discussed, and the board wants to take the engineer's recommending, hey, remove them to do complete waterproofing, so you don't have the other gentleman who might have left already, that you don't spend another $2.4 million or whatever the numbers he came up with earlier. So I want to be clear that the engineer's recommendation is based on their sound expertise. The board is relying upon that in moving forward with the consideration of the removal of the balustrades to do a complete project this time. What I want to then, sir, clarify for you is if the membership doesn't approve the change to the glass, and that is completely within your discretion, then the default is the code-compliant concrete balustrades, okay? Which what I understand from the presentation would be, at least now, approximately $500,000 more. So it is your decision to make that choice, but know that at this point, that's the choice. It's either, as I said earlier, the new concrete code-compliant balustrades or the glass railing choice.
I completely understand. The reason why I gave a little bit of history is because, A, I served on the board. I was president of this association, and I served on the board for 5 years. The reason why I'm bringing up in regard to the time length, I think we need to learn from our mistakes. The wording that we send out to residents, we're in a catch-22, people. We need 75% of the membership to change our bylaws, to change that 75%. We can't get that. We tried to get it one time. You're well aware of it. We tried to get it one time, and we had people diligently sitting at tables trying to get the vote for over a month. We got the vote. We turned it in 2 days late to the state, and the state denied it. So what I'm trying to say is we need to learn from our mistakes. It's not a handful of people put tile and carpet down. It is an enormous amount of people where we had no checks and balances. So again, I know I'm flip-flopping, going back and forth in regard to the legality and the issue of changing a bylaw and also checking what we do inside our condo. But I mean, it's not going to happen if we don't word this correctly and we don't have it properly written in regard to what the difference in payments are going to be, as Gary touched on. I'm telling you, people are not going to vote for a blank check. They want to know if we're not sure, if we're not sure if we're going to be assessed, or not sure if it's going to go against the loan. And either way, it doesn't make a difference. What I'm saying is people want to know, and they're going to vote against it if they don't know. We're really behind the 8 ball. And I think I hope it's not going to be a waste of time. But I have a little bit of history in that, and that's why I bring that up.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Leon Renke. Okay.
Give me one. I just wanted to respond to that in the financing. I just want to make it clear that we do have a line of credit in place. It's just a matter of us hearing back from the bank about the extension that we've requested, looking into the extension and a small increase on it. So we already have a form of funding in place. The question is, the problem is I don't want to say definitively yes until I get the response back from the bank. But right now, the goal is to increase the line of credit and not have to assess owners. That's the goal, okay? But I understand your point. It's a fair point.
If I can just Paul, can you clarify? Well, your bank I find it very unlikely that the bank you're using, because of their strong history, loans made to community associations, and your history with them, that they won't extend the line of credit. But just to clarify that, obviously, if you are borrowing, it does need to be paid back. The difference in obtaining the line of credit or an extension of the line of credit is, rather than you getting hit with large sums that are needed immediately, it gets to be spread out over a much longer period of time in a monthly or quarterly basis for those owners, because the bank will basically support the project. And so there will be an assessment or a modification of, but it's going to allow you to be over a longer period of time.
The letter of credit that we're currently working with is due to expire in February. When they obtained the letter of credit last year, when the board voted on the letter of credit and what the 22 line items were for that letter of credit, inside that letter of credit was one line for the 50-year, 40 plus 10-year renewal. That number still is not enough, even if we don't talk about the balconies, is still not enough to cover all of what we need to do for the 40 plus 10-year renewal. That letter of credit was put in place even before we obtained structural or anything like that. There was I don't know, I wasn't involved in that process, but there was a budget that was done. I think it was $750,000 is the line item in the LOC for that, and then there was all these other 21 items that were in the LOC. That LOC is going to expire this February. So we have three choices. One, we either take the rest of the money that we have in the LOC, put it in an account, use it, which is not enough to even cover everything that we need to do. Not talking even about the balconies. The second thing we can do is talk with the bank, which we're in the process of doing now, to extend the letter of credit, because this project, from the day it starts until the day it ends, is 1 year. That's what they're saying, 365 days. We need the extension of the letter of credit to make sure that we have those funds available throughout the time period and not pay interest on that money while we're not using it. So if we took all the money now, before the letter of credit is going to expire, put it into account, we start paying the bank interest on it, which we haven't paid for whatever. So that's what we're in the process now of trying to extend the letter of credit and at the same time increase the line of credit, not only to cover what would be the balconies, but really to cover what would be in structural's bid, or what we know it's going to cost just for the 40 plus 10 year. And how much, I don't know, where's Paul? Oh. Paul, how much, you had done the numbers, correct? And there's already, without consideration of the shortfall, there's a deficit, correct?
That is correct.
And what is that number?
The deficit, depending on which railing system, anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million.
No, not talking about the railing. If we don't consider the railings, putting them in, there's still not enough money in the LOC to cover everything that we're going to be doing, correct?
No, I think we'll be right at the last dollar.
Well, and then there's overruns, of
and then if there's an overrun, we will not be able to cover
exactly.
it. Right.
So the idea is to increase the letter of credit. Hopefully, we'll get the same terms that we have now, interest rate and whatever, and then in a year, 18 months, when that is done, then we make the decision, the board then will make a decision as to whether or not they assess to pay the letter of credit off, or if we just pay the letter of credit off and work that into the budget somehow. So that's what they're working on right now. We're working on with the bank. We're told that the bank is, we're in a very favorable position to get that extended and to get more money. So we're hoping, I don't know, Paul left again. We're hoping that, within the next couple of days, we're going to have that information, correct, Paul?
That is correct. We should hear something this week.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And question number one. And question number two is for the legal team. Is it possible that we do the voting to enforce people to say option one or option two? And if we don't receive a ballot from them, we make a phone campaign to say, not to bias the decision, but to say you need to respond. So that, because I think it's a compelling case if you get active participation. The silent majority might win. By default, will end up in a place where it's not really what they may want if they actively participate.
Okay, one of the things that we're going to be doing, because we do understand that there's not a lot of people yet back in the building, there's a certain percentage of snowbirds, so this presentation is being filmed and that's going to go on YouTube. And everybody is going to get in the mail a waiver to sign if they so choose to. They don't have to necessarily even bring it back. They can email it, scan it, email it, do whatever they need to do to get it back to the manager in time. From the time that the first waiver is given to the manager, we have 90 days, according to the law, to obtain the votes that we need for the 75%. So we will know within those 3 months what we're missing in order to get the 75% vote that most people want. And there will be a campaign, because there's a lot of people that are interested in this, and there will be a campaign to contact the people who have not voted. And if they say, I'm not voting and I'm voting no, then we can mark them as a no. But the waiver that we have currently in place is what is enforceable and was approved by the Board of Directors at the last Board of Directors meeting. So that's the one we're going to use. And those who are in favor of the glass balconies will diligently work to make sure that everyone is contacted. And if it's a no, it's a no.
Yeah, exactly. But we need an active
response. And we'll be able to hopefully keep track of that. And if it's a no, then they're marked on the spreadsheet no, so we don't contact them again. But if we have no response at all, then
we have the right to contact.
Yes,
okay,
we will be contacting people.
Okay.
Those who are in favor, and we ask for anybody's help who is in favor of this, to please lend us a hand, lend the team, whoever it is that is for this, a hand to work. Sit in the lobby, talk to people, do whatever you can to make sure that everyone votes one way or another.
Okay, thank
you. So that
you.
we have all the information.
And there is no way of saying you vote yes or no. You just have to go with the silent.
Even if people are going to vote no, a non-vote is a no vote.
Okay, so that doesn't
this was the waiver that our attorney. What? Yeah, the consent form is what was presented to us, and it's what was approved by the board. So that's the way we're going to go. But again, those who are in favor of it are going to work very diligently over the starting 90-day period. Starting today. If some people have returned them today, we have 3 months to get this done.
Can we collect votes today?
Absolutely. There's waiver forms in the back, and people can sign them and present them to Paul.
And a waiver form means what, again?
Is the consent to say, yes, I want glass balconies.
That's what's called
it's
waiver.
A yes.
It's a written consent form. Just to be clear. Yeah. Okay. It's a written consent form. And what that means by the title is if you sign it and return it, and you are the individual who has the authorization to vote for your unit, you are consenting to the change from concrete to glass. So if you consent, you will return. And yes, and Steve, you said everything very well. I'll just piggyback. And because it was mentioned earlier, you try to vote to get your percentage reduced to amend your documents. It takes a village. So for those of you who are interested, and if you're not, you're free to campaign against. But if you are in support of the change from new concrete to glass, then it behooves you to reach out to your friends and neighbors and ask them to, if they support as well, reach out to their friends and neighbors and ask them to return the consent forms. If they're local, you can sign it right there, give it to you, you can return it for them. Okay? And these consent, unlike the annual meeting where ballots are returned, sealed, and they are confidential to the date of the meeting, these are not. These are as they come in, there's a running tally kept of those who've come in and consented. So at any time that if you're interested in knowing if someone has submitted their consent form yet, you can go to the office and speak with Paul. You can certainly reach out to friends and neighbors if they haven't yet and ask them if they're interested in supporting. Let's keep it friendly. Let's keep it courteous. But if you're in favor, by all means, support.
And one other thing that I want to say is that we're going to be making sure matching the consent form to the signed document that the people sign when they
Of course. Yeah, I
certificate to
hope
make
so.
sure that the signatures match.
That's
because
good.
that's very important.
Yes, of
You know, we want to make sure that this is done appropriately and legally.
And
Thank you.
And if it is, for whatever reason, if a unit owner, if there's a voting certificate on file, which you all have always used, and someone returns it and it's not the designated person, that unit owner will be contacted to inform them that if they are interested, they need to make sure either fill out a new voting certificate or fill out a new consent form. Because again, as Steve said, in discussion with myself on behalf of my office, we want to make sure that if the membership supports this, that all T's are crossed and I's are dotted the whole way. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Essentially, I think that to start, you said, if you start collecting the paper today, the 90 days start from today. I think this is a big mistake because what you're doing now, representing this for a few number of the people who are available here today, we broadcasting this the next months, for a month or 2 months. Why we are killing ourselves? If you start counting the 90 days from today, we are killing ourselves. The 90 days will be running out before we getting anything back.
No.
Wait till first that you send this to the owner. Send more information to the owner. And after that, put a date for the collection. And the people, they start sending the refund back again. By this way, you can start counting the 90 days. But in my opinion, 90 days is starting from the day now. People start signing, you start collecting, you are killing the vote completely.
That's fine. The 90 days will start when Paul receives the first one back. Yes, when we receive the first one back.
And in the meantime, I agree with Mr. Gary. Because really, what he said was a lot of stuff really need to be more informed in this letter. This letter is just more confused than it is a letter for somebody to sign and send it back again.
What we can do is we can prepare a cover letter.
We have to prepare this letter back again with a way that, what we call it, dummy proof. Anybody can read it, can understand exactly what he's looking for. He needs to put more information, as Gary said in the letter, how much it cost us in the past, what the future is, make it clear.
That will be in
this letter.
That will be in a cover letter that's going to go with the waiver. The waiver is going with a cover letter, which will explain everything.
Stephen, make it easy, not complicated.
It will be very easy.
One letter, it doesn't need a cover letter. One easy letter cost us that much. The new one costs us this. They show the positive and the negative in an easy letter and vote yes or no and return the letter back. In my opinion, this letter is more confusing than it is. Starting today is another mistake. Thank you.
I haven't said anything yet already. So, my name is Eric Benari. I'm in 4E. My name is Eric Benari. I bought into this building in 2012, and shortly after came into a very unpleasant experience that started at about $5 million and ended up being significantly higher than that. I want to tell you a little bit about my background. I'm now a member of the CRC committee, although since the day that I was told that I was elected to the CRC committee, I've not seen one invitation or one meeting of the CRC committee that will deal with the issues that are in front of us. So rolling a little bit back, I come out of 30 years of doing contracting for the Department of Defense and a few other government agencies. In my world, in my life, When we hire a subcontractor, I hold his feet to the fire, not the board of directors, because I'm the contract review committee. So if this gentleman, with all due respect, has 3 bids, put them in front of me. Let me see that. Let me analyze it. I've done glass for the government for the last 30 years, on and off. Let me see the specs on the glass. Let me see what it is. When you do something that, in my world, was intended to prevent blast from taking a wall down, it really makes a difference how you anchor this thing to the wall. Let me see the specs. Let me see the drawings on it. Let me evaluate those prices and tell you if they make sense to me or not. Let me find out how those bids were analyzed by whoever was analyzed it on the prime contractor. It's not that I have a problem with who is the prime contractor, at least not at the moment, but I do need to have an understanding of how the prime contractor evaluates something. What is the basis for it?
I want to correct you on something. The day you got on the CRC committee was the first day I gave you all the information. You got Dropbox, you got all the information. We already had the meeting, but I sent you everything. I'm sorry you didn't take the time to go through the paperwork. The paperwork was given to you 100% by me.
I took the time to go over the paper.
I'm sorry for saying this. I'm a little bit disappointed.
John, he didn't say that. He didn't say that, John.
No, he said he didn't go through the documents. He got the documents.
No, he didn't say that. He said there hasn't been meetings.
Well, the meetings were already done. The meetings were already, before, I want to clarify. I want to clarify. Let me clarify for a second. We had a CRC committee. One of our members resigned, okay? During that time, we had sent out a notice looking for another person. We already had made our decisions up, and then we moved on to the next topic at that point. True, we haven't met for anything else because the only issue that we had at the time was this concrete work.
Yeah, that's all he stated.
I know, but he said he didn't go through the documents.
I did say I didn't go through the documents.
I apologize, but
Then let him finish,
yeah.
because he said he's a member of the CRC committee.
Correct.
There hasn't been meetings.
There's nothing about that meeting. That meeting was already done. It got presented to the board, and then we moved on at that point.
There hasn't been a contract closed in 5 years.
No, he just none.
A couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And he hasn't seen this contract.
No, I have not. What I'm saying right now is that I happen to be leaning towards the cosmetics of having a glass. I have full appreciation of the differential and the cost between the current concrete type railings that we have and between the glass. What I am sure is also that right now, as we sit here, we don't have a complete and final picture of what would be the overall cost. And I don't want to be repeating what I have experienced in 2012. Here is 1.2 million, and oh, by the way, we need to actually do reinforcement of the sides of the railings, so we need another $600,000, and by the way, you have to take your tiles off, we have to seal the concrete, we have to put new shutters because maybe your shutters are or maybe they're not prior to the date where the codes were allowing to have those. We need to have all that information complied in one way that makes everything, the bottom line, gives us the cost of what is this bottom line going to be. Right now, as we stand, I have no idea if the shutters that I live behind were placed in prior to the 1997, if that's the cutoff date, or after that. I have no idea how much would it cost to put new shutters, but I do have an idea that I'm being told that I, as the unit owner, will be personally responsible for putting new shutters if mine are not in compliance. So I need to have that complete picture of everything that we have before I can vote left or right, in spite of the fact that I like to have glasses. It's nicer than what we have now. So that information needs to be available to us. Right now, if somebody says to me, how much do I need to pay for a new set of shutters in my place? I have no idea. I can take a good guess, but I have no idea.
When the project was done on the pool deck, did everybody, before the project was started, did everybody know exactly what the cost was going to be for that project, and did it remain on budget? The answer is no. It did not.
That's right.
Exactly.
And I don't want to repeat the same
But
mistake.
you do know that the glass balconies are going to be approximately $1.2 million, and you do know that the concrete balconies would be $1.7 million. Yes, there are overruns with what he was talking about, $30 a square foot if the things are not in, things like that. Those are costs that we don't know because it's inside the concrete. But the major...
No, excuse me, those are costs that I can know inside the contract in spite of
But they
what
can't
being-
start the project until
That's right.
we know which way we're going. So they're not going to start the project until they know what they're going to be doing with the balconies, whether they're going to be taking them off and putting concrete back on or putting glass back on. Once they start taking the current balustrades off, they will get into the concrete, and hopefully those...
Steve, you're basically preaching to the choir on that point.
No, but
because
what I'm
as I
saying to you
say,
is, you're saying you do not have any idea of what the cost would be, and we've presented you
of
with
what would be the complete cost, I'm
Well,
saying.
we didn't know what the complete cost was going to be for the
And that
pool
was a
deck.
very poor mistake. If
But
I could
I
have,
think-
if
but
I could have had a way to send the
Nothing-
president of the board there home at that time, I would.
First of all, there's a contingency built into the cost of the project for overrun. There's definitely a contingency built in, which is the appropriate thing to do. And second of all, if we move forward in whatever direction we move in, just like with any construction project, whether you're doing home renovations or whatever, you're never going to know exactly to the dime what you're going to be spending.
I will if you give me a free hand at it.
Well-
I guarantee you that before I start anything, I will know the cost, and I will bring it in front of a prime contractor, and I will tell him, if you want to work with these numbers, tell me. If not, time to open up the bidding. Guess what? This is what I'm trying to tell you, that you have to know what you have to define, articulate, figure out what is it that you're trying to do.
And we
right
did.
now, you're
we did.
presenting, only to an extent. You
No,
know
we
right
did.
now how much is the glass. If you can tell me what would my balcony and everybody else's cost on the day that they have glass, floor, shutters, I'll be willing to listen.
The only thing that you've mentioned right now that we don't have a cost for is shutters, because we don't know whose shutters are code compliant and can be
Right.
put back on.
Correct.
That, out of all the things you just mentioned, the floor, the tiles, all these other things, everything else has been
Right,
built into the
right,
cost.
right.
So you're talking, and the shutters were built in? All right, then here.
I also want to point out that, before you speak, Andrew, the shutter question, sir, that you bring up, which is a valid question, it is not relevant to the vote on the railings, though. Because the removal and replacement of shutters will occur regardless of which railing is chosen.
That's incorrect.
I don't know where you're getting that idea.
I'm going to explain why. Because you're going to have a resident that's got 25-year-old shutters that's going to vote against it because they don't want to purchase new shutters. So don't say it's irrelevant, because it is.
Well, no. I'm saying that needs to be clarified then to when people are voting. But I want to know for you here, just letting you people, because the questions come up a couple times on railings. Absolutely, you each want to know, hey, am I going to have that additional expense to put up new shutters? You're 100% valid. But I do want to just clarify that is not. Let's say you're told you do have to put shutters, you do, you don't, you don't. That isn't going to impact, or it doesn't have an impact on whether you still want the glass or not, so long as that's clarified to those owners. It needs to be clarified.
People are going to vote no. It's human nature. People are going to say it's not going to affect.
No, I'm saying if you clarify for them that the shutter question is not relevant, which is to your point, let's make sure we educate.
Right. And so,
Yeah, I mean, I don't fall into that. I'm playing devil's advocate.
I understand.
But I'm saying I know the mindset of people. People are saying, I don't use the gym, so why don't we use 40-year-old equipment? That's the mindset. So someone's going to have 25-year-old shutters, and they're going to say, oh my gosh, I have to get new shutters if we do this? No, I'm not going to vote. So it is relevant.
well,
I'm just saying, again, I'm for it. These are just problems we're going to run into. Again, I'm for it, but
I get it. Let me clarify one thing there. Regardless of what railing system came on, the shutter is an independent item of it. Okay, so And that's what I got to make clear to you. The shutter would be an independent component if it was a 25-year-old shutter or not, whether it was glass or concrete. Both would have the same impact regardless of what system is on there. Right. And to answer your question here on identifying costs, we've gone through great measures here to identify as much of the cost as we can and to reduce your exposure to costly overruns that we didn't foresee. Some existing conditions that we are, like I said, like the temperature bar and stuff like that may or may not be in there. We think it's in there. Everything seems to be, the plans indicate that it's there. This is still a restoration job of which we will come. We may find some balconies have it and some don't. I mean, we've come to that kind of find out even through the stuff that we've had here before. So it'd be very difficult to do this as a lump sum with no contingency is an impossibility. This is a restoration. There's always going to be, it's a unit cost contract with contingency for cost overruns that are unforeseen because the cost of identifying that exceeds the cost of what the change may be later on down the road. So you could pay engineers and people to come out here and do a lot of demolition work to actually identify all this stuff, or do you put that money into doing the work, okay? In this particular case, your exposure is small as far as having to put in additional strengthening on the edge. Structural is one of the nation's leaders in concrete strengthening. They come up with all kind of ways that we can strengthen this edge. It's not a huge dollar value if we don't find the structural being in there, the components that we're needing, but to get to your point, though, this is a very difficult job to nail down to the excuse my language, the gnat's ass on this thing, okay? Because there's too many components here that you can't see and identify up in front of the job.
This may be true for some of the individual balconies, but I do believe that in order to get a complete picture of where are we going, we need better information that we have. Now, I must say, I only came to catch the last glimpse of the photographs that were in the presentation. I was running late here today.
Okay.
And I have to say that I find it lacking in the amount of data that I think a presentation of this nature should have in order to be able to be comprehensive enough. Once again, I appreciate your points. They're valid. I understand that the relevancy between having to deal with the shutters regardless of what we're going to get. This is ABC to me. What I do need to have before I go anywhere, I need to have a complete understanding of as close as I can, and I don't feel that we're there at the moment, of what would be the overall exposure that we will have with, the issue of the letter of credit and the other issues of that. That's something that I can understand Paul's position on it and go along with that as well. But I think we need more information that we currently have in this before we take a vote. And by the way, I also believe that what Mr. Shahada brought in is in his point with regards to the 90 days, I do feel that because we are lacking information at the moment, those 90 days are not working in our favor at the moment. Once we have a complete set of data that we can say we now understand where we're going, I think that will be the day to take a vote based on understanding that rather than having the vagueness that we currently have. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mitch Tobin from 19A. To the woman that was talking about the glass on the balconies as opposed to the cement, I used to live down the block in La Hermitage. You do not feel the heat from the glass. I never did. As far as cleaning them, you do have to clean glass like you have to clean your windows. As far as the gentleman that spoke about the 3 times in 17 years that they've redone, done work to the balustrades, that's even more of a reason to go forward. They're not going to get less labor intensive as time goes on. They're only going to get more labor intensive. So why wouldn't we go for a system that makes sense and we're going to have a lot less maintenance cost as we go forward? So the upfront savings might be $500,000, but over the next 15 years, it's going to be considerably more than that. Thank you. It's a great point.
Hi, I'm Helen Baker. I live in 15A. I have both hurricane windows and shutters, and I thank God that I had the shutters during Irma, because I'm probably one of the few people that lived on that end of the corner where it really didn't have any water intrusion, and I'm grateful for it. I'm glad to hear that we can hopefully put back shutters, because I don't see any way you're going to get them out of my balcony if you can help it. My question, two things I have to say. Number one, I think the way it's worded, the vote is going to indicate that you want glass balconies when you remove the balustrades. After listening to this presentation, I can't imagine anyone in their right mind wants to keep or replace the balustrades. I've been here through some of those changes, and probably what David had said about $2 million is probably correct. I don't know for a fact, but I paid a lot of those assessments. I'm for getting rid of them. The problem is going to be with the people that are not here, who have not seen or heard this presentation, whether they like glass or not. It's kind of rolled into one. You're saying get rid of the glass balustrades, replace them with glass. That may be they want to get rid of balustrades, but they don't want the glass. So I'm concerned about a vote being passed based on that. Like Alex knows, and we've all been here trying to pass things for 75%. I don't know that we've ever had 75% except that one time, and we got shot down on a technicality. So I think we have to be very careful how we word things when we present it to the rest of the people who are here. And there's a lot of new people here. They have never gone through the assessments that we've all felt on these balustrades. They're a curse. They are really a curse. So to even consider not wanting to replace them is crazy. I think your problem's going to be replace them with what? Railings are one of the things, and of course, that's going to be an individual choice.
The 75%, you're right, is a stretch.
Tough. I
And
know,
if we don't get the 75%, then we're going to be stuck with concrete. But what we're going to do is when we send out the waiver that was approved by the board, it will be sent with a cover letter that will have a full explanation of everything.
Okay.
And now, based on what we learned today, what people's comments are and what people's thoughts are, you know, we're going to add more to that. We'll add more about
Good, it should be explained.
the shutters and what have you.
The other-
And that's why this is good.
Yeah.
Because
I
we
agree.
are learning as well.
The other things I was going to mention, Steve, is that, I forgot what it was now. It must be a senior moment. My question for me, again, on being on A, I have a lot of those concrete walls. Are they all going to go, or have we decided on that?
That's something we'll determine after. Once it's determined that we are, if we do move from concrete, new concrete, or the old concrete to glass, then we will, with the board, now knowing that glass is the way to go, do we spend the extra $100,000? And that's basically what it is. I think it's $100,000 or $150,000 for all of the three stacks.
Am I correct in saying that there are rebars in those concrete walls?
Yes.
They, in turn, will rust.
Yes.
Which is just as bad as all the rest. So I
Yes.
don't even know that there's even a question when it comes to something
Well, that's
like
something that the board, once we determine which way we're going, that's something the board can then decide.
Okay, now the rest of the balcony, the tiles will be removed.
Yes. And we hope that nobody will put tiles back on, because according to our bylaws, you're not supposed to be putting them on.
That's probably true, but when I didn't put the tiles
Me
on.
either,
They were
and I
here
have them.
when I got there too. But we were kind of told at the time when we came in that it would protect the concrete. They wanted to get rid of the grass and the carpet and all of that,
Yeah,
but
it
tile
doesn't.
was going to protect it.
It doesn't.
Okay.
And the bylaws specifically state that tile, and you can look at them, tiles are not to be put on the balconies, but
Okay.
people did.
Next thing, I just want to underline again, just like any other vote, a non-vote is going to be taken as a no vote.
As a no
correct?
vote, and a no vote is putting up new concrete.
Exactly. So I think that has to be emphasized
Yes.
again and again, because I think a lot of new people don't realize that by not voting, they think, well, that means they're going to kill it.
And,
It
and
won't.
that's why
It'll
I'm
do just
happy
the
we had
opposite.
this town hall,
me
because
too.
it gave us an opportunity to
It does.
learn and to figure out, what we need to do to get this out to the owners and to make sure that they have all the information.
It does. It
And I
answers a lot of
appreciate
my
that.
question. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. One final question?
Yes, it's me, Patty Piffith, 9G. I've been here since 1996, so I've been through the big ones and spent a ton of money. I have some questions. Are you just doing this side of the building? Okay, so the west side will not be touched? Or the north side?
Right.
Because some of those balconies wrap around the...
The balcony will be done, but not the catwalks.
Oh, okay, okay. And my other question is, how long will this take?
1 year.
Just 1 year?
From the time they start and from what structural indicated to us the last time we had a meeting with them, they're going to be starting on this end of the building, front and back, and wrapping all the way around to end with the A and B stack.
Okay.
And they indicated to us that from day one, when they start the work, it will be 365 days.
Okay. And on these glass railings in a hurricane, have we gotten any kind of information from other buildings that have had these panels in? How did they hold up? Does the sand, because I'm on the 9th floor, and before I had my shutters installed for Wilma, I had 4 inches of sand on the 9th floor balcony right here in the corner, around a corner. And with my shutters, I don't have any problem anymore. But I'm just thinking that sand hitting that glass at 185 miles an hour, what's that going to do to it?
Can you answer that question?
No, I'm not a glass expert.
Oh, you can answer?
Okay, so the railing system that we put up there is designed for those kind of wind speeds, up to 180 miles an hour. You're in a high velocity hurricane zone here.
But with sand hitting it, that's...
Okay, so they are impact resistant, meaning they're laminated, just like your impact glass would be. But just like your windows, if they're getting hit with a braided sand, they may be etched. Okay, they may have problems from that. But there's really nothing we can put into the fabrication of them that would eliminate that. That's something that. But however, if there was a what they call a large missile impact or a small missile impact to it, meaning an airborne thing, they're not going to shatter and come apart. They're laminated glass so that it stays intact, so we don't have glass falling off. It's not a tempered glass. That part, just like the windows you put into your unit there.
Okay, I have one more question about shutters. My shutters were brand new the last time they pulled them off. The building pulled them off to do balcony work. And they never re-permitted them when they put them back.
That's okay. They were done originally with a permit?
Yes, I have my permits.
That's
but
fine.
but when let me tell you something though, when they did put them back the last time, thank God I went out and I checked and I started to pull them and close them. They didn't even attach them to the wall. The screws were not even into the wall. So it's like I had to come down to the office and say, I have a little bit of a problem here, and thank God I looked, because had hurricane season come and I went to shut my shutters, good luck trying to find somebody to help you at that point.
Right.
So, but I worry about that re-permitting and making sure that they're in proper working condition if you take them off and put them back on. And the other question I have is, how will they fit? I have tile on my balcony they sit on top of. If you take that tile off and you put my shutters back, you've got about 2 inches worth of, what do I do now? Will it fit?
We will shim. We'll make the system that you have still work. We'll put spacers underneath the existing to match where the tile used to be, which is even a better application, because then water and dirt and stuff doesn't attract or hold up against that rail.
Okay.
So yes, you will be able to put them back. That you had the permit, they will go back in the same location as per the permit that you had there.
Okay.
That's the theory. I don't know how or why or what happened that yours didn't before, but part of our work here is to make sure that the quality control and quality assurances throughout the job at the end of it is done, and that things like your shutters aren't attached doesn't happen. That's kind of what you all are paying us to do then too.
Okay, and my other question is, when you go and you do this work, are you just dealing with the edges of the balcony, or are you going to take the entire balcony off in some instances if you find something going on under there?
We haven't seen anything that is indicative of that. When we're taking off full balconies, there's usually a lot of problems with the balcony. What we're seeing on your building primarily is the edge. Even though we're going to take off all the tile, we're going to expose some other spalls and stuff, but we didn't see anything that, so far,
Right.
that is indicative of, hey, we're going to have to drop this whole balcony. It's very apparent when you have to drop the balconies that the concrete is in poor condition enough that would warrant that. We did not see anything here that was indicative of that.
And I have one more question for you.
Okay.
In our very first concrete restoration we had done in 2000, windows were drilled underneath, completely drilled out underneath, and rocks holding up the frame of the window. In your estimation, is it proper to pour concrete underneath a window that is kind of like hanging there? You can do that?
Sometimes. Sometimes we can work just underneath the window.
This was major portions of
Okay.
a big window. And then I was told that, that the window was ruined when I tiled by this building. And I was like, no, windows never leaked, and they leak now after they went underneath. That's what I was afraid of you were going to start doing again here. And
The one thing that we don't like to do is what we call an intrusion, which is we have to come into your unit. We have
6
to take,
feet.
whatever it may be, and take out your window and do that work. So we're going to try as best we can to work underneath the frame that you have. Now, the engineer, whoever, when they're out here doing that inspection, may come and say, look, we got to come into your unit. We can't. The concrete is shattered. We don't have a substrate to bond against. We have to come into your unit and build a dust wall and take out your window and do the work and then put it back. That's a possibility of happening. We may find a handful that we have to do that with.
so you're saying that when they do come in underneath 6 feet into your bedrooms, they should have replaced that window?
No, not replace
No?
the window. Not replace the window. We're trying to preserve the window, really. It's really the ideal thing. We try not to bust the window up at all.
Yeah.
We understand the windows are a unit owner's responsibility, right? So we don't want to try to cause you more financial burden here while we're doing this. Our intent here is, if we had to do that, they would take the window out, do the work they had to do, then put the window back in place, okay? So that their access is still from the outside of the building while they're doing the work. And when they're done, of course, the finishes aren't there. Floor finish is what you had, but you'll have your window back in place, sealed, whatever the case may be there.
Okay, as long as we're just doing the edge and not doing that again.
That
I
seems to
can't
be
live
most
through
of it.
that again,
Right, yeah,
so.
okay.
Anyway, I want to thank the few of you that are left for coming. I think, it's been a very informative, it's been a learning for us as well. I think that we have some things to do before we send the waiver out to the owners, which we will be doing. The consent form, sorry. The consent will be, work to do before we send the consent form out to the owners, and we'll take care of that work this week. And then we'll send it out, and we need to get these back because once again, the permit is produced by the city of Fort Lauderdale. We'd like to get this started and get the year behind us and get this moving. But anyway, again, thank you very much for coming, and I appreciate it. And thanks to Andrew, to Michael, to our Steve from Structural, to Paul, and everybody else. So thank you.